not sure we did deserve our AAA. So I'm not quibbling with where S&P got. I'm just quibbling with the process they used to get there.
That was Bloomberg contributing editor Bethany McLean on last night's Downgrade special. And she shares a sentiment felt far and wide that maybe there's nothing wrong with downgrading America's credit rating. The issue is how we got there. Here to address those criticisms, the man responsible for all of Standard & Poor's ratings and the process behind them, S&P President Deven Sharma. Deven, good morning to you. Welcome. Glad you could be here on the Inside Track. Let me begin by asking you this question. Is it fair to say that the dispute that you're having right now with the Treasury Department, and I should add the White House, has to do with what you might call potentially conflicting methods of calculation? The Treasury says you made a $2 trillion mistake. S&P says actually it's only a $345 billion mistake. It's a question of math.
Well, let me clarify. It was, as you said, an assumption on the spending growth forecasts. And in our conversation with CBO and others, we took an approach where we were looking at the discretionary spending growth growing at the GDP growth levels. And in further conversation with Treasury and CBO, as it was pointed out to us, that it should really be at the inflation levels, because that's what it's in the
But it's an issue of
budget
calculation.
Well, it's an issue of forecast. You can use either the inflation or you can use the GDP growth rates. And as it was pointed out, and that's what our process is about, that when somebody points that out, we look at it carefully, we revise it, and then again use that to make a conclusion. Okay. And that's what the process is about.
What I want to know is, why did you not give the Treasury Department, if not the benefit of the doubt, a little bit of time to work through this? Because there's precedent for that. I don't want to have to remind you, but on July the 28th, Standard & Poor's pulled the credit rating on $1.5 billion of commercial mortgage-backed securities for not dissimilar reasons. There were conflicting methods of calculation. Citi and Goldman Sachs were trying to sell these securities. They had, in fact, found buyers for them, and then they had to pull the offering because S&P withdrew the ratings, quote unquote, because of the discovery of potentially conflicting methods of calculation. Why not treat the Treasury Department the same way you were willing to treat the investors in this $1.5 billion CMBS deal?
Yeah, we always do. We look at...
Well, it doesn't look like it. That's why we're talking about it.
Sure. What the facts are, in that case, when we looked at it, there was a bit of a doubt. We went back and we said, let's go back and check it again. In this case, we went back to the CBO, we got their guidance, we went back, did some calculations again. And as you pointed out at the early outset, that the difference between the debt rising to 14.5 trillion with the new assumptions in 2015 versus the old assumptions of 14.7 trillion was only about $300 billion. It is still a lot of money, but the point is the debt is still rising, and it is 14.5, and it is still growing at 25%, and that's why the sovereigns team and the ratings committee came to that conclusion.
Again, I am not going to argue. It's not my place to argue with the decision. I'm going back to what Bethany was saying as we introduced this segment, the process. For people to have confidence in what S&P says, they need to see consistency. Now, they haven't seen as much consistency over the past few years as they would like, and they want to see consistency now. And what I'm suggesting is that the pattern of behavior between that $1.5 billion CMBS deal and the downgrade of America's AAA rating aren't all that consistent. The process,
sure,
what goes on behind the scenes. People know a lot about what happened between the Treasury Department and S&P, and they look at this situation and they say, hang on, there's an incongruity here.
Yeah. Actually, the process is very consistent. And our process is first to be very transparent, to have a very open process that says when we look at it, when we come to a conclusion that there is either a concern, we will be very transparent about it. In fact, every time there is any issue, we just go public about it and say that. And in this case, the ratings, in the CMBS case, the ratings had already been done where we wanted to back off. In this case, the ratings was not yet announced, and we still had time to look at it, and the sovereigns team and the credit committee looked at it. Then they made the decision, then they went out. So there's a difference between the two situations, but the fundamentals of the process of being transparent, open, looking at it, reviewing when somebody gives you an input is absolutely intact in our organization.
Deven, it's a straightforward question. Are S&P's ratings better today than they used to be?
We have continued to strengthen our analytics. We have strengthened our checks and balances into the organization. We have been more transparent in the last 4 years. And we have continued to engage with the marketplace and the investors to sort of make them appreciate what is it that we do, what is the rating means, and what it doesn't mean.
But are you doing a better job?
I would say so, yes.
Okay, so if you're doing a better job, people should have more confidence in the ratings S&P is producing today than the ratings it produced in the past.
Well, you know, if you look at it almost across the board, with the exception of one or two areas, our ratings has continued to perform over many decades as one would expect it to. In fact, recently, if you look at, there was an IMF report on sovereign ratings, and it...
Oh, no, but you guys, look, you testified before Congress, and you said that there is a uniform scale that encompasses corporates, that encompasses structured finance, that encompasses municipals, that encompasses sovereigns.
Sure.
So you can't just say, well, we've been good in one and not so great in another.
Like I said, you know, there were one or two areas where we recognized, we reflected, we learned lessons from it, and as I mentioned, we made analytical changes to make our ratings much more forward-looking, much more comparable across the sectors, and we have been moving and making changes to get there.
Okay, Deven, good of you to be here on the Inside Track and take some hard questions. Deven Sharma of Standard & Poor's.